Today, Funmaster Mike is inventing a brand new chess term. Well, actually, I'm taking an existing idea, but I'm giving it a more fun name. We have this very weird idea in chess called collinear moves, and I don't want to talk about that because that term is no fun. I'm going to rebrand it. Today's term is called the nutmeg. Now, for any of you who play soccer or football, you know that a nutmeg is when your opponent doesn't go left or right, the ball goes between your legs. And as a former goalkeeper, I can say it's pretty embarrassing when that happens. Let's take a look at the nutmeg in action. Now, the reason I thought of this idea is because it actually came up twice in my recent match with Tani. And I thought, if it happened twice in one match, you need to know about it. Take a look at these two rooks. Are they on the same line? Of course they are. Now, we would expect white to either take or run away, or maybe just stay still. But the nutmeg is when two pieces are on the same line and your piece travels along the line but doesn't actually capture. And for some weird reason, this is a very hard idea to see in chess. So in my game, I played rook up the board, but where did I stop? I didn't take. I stopped on d6. That's the nutmeg. And the problem here for Tani is that if he does nothing about my rook, I will simply double rooks and completely control the d-file, maybe even put my queen here one day. So I got Tani to capture, and as is often the case in a nutmeg, he improved my pawn structure, because after takes, now this pawn is a real force to be reckoned with. Now if black plays perfectly, he might be able to hold this position, but the problem is that pawn is really annoying to deal with. And if we just go forward a couple more moves, you will see that in this position, my pawn got really far down the board, and I won in a few more moves. Now, I told you it actually happened twice in the same match. Let's see the nutmeg happen with a different piece. It turns out, because the original idea is called collinear, linear meaning line, well, there's three pieces that travel along a line. A rook, which is the most popular nutmeg, but can also be a queen or a bishop. In this position, Tani has challenged my queen. And again, what am I going to do? Am I going to go left? Am I going to go right? Am I going to capture? No, I'm going to do the nutmeg. In this position, I played queen to e5. I stopped halfway. So this idea is so easy to see when you're thinking of the nutmeg, but as is so often the case in chess, you have to be thinking of the idea to make it work. And now Tani has a big problem. My queen is completely dominating the chessboard. I'm about to play the move pawn to g5 and win his knight. And of course, he can't really ever capture my queen because then it's winner, winner, knight, dinner. I'm winning one of his two knights on the next turn. Tani held the draw to his credit, but white did have a better position. Let's take a look and see how the world champion does his thing. This came out of a game from the chess.com Speed Chess Championship, and white has just played the knight to f6 to attack the rook. Now, most people would expect Magnus to probably capture. Running away doesn't seem so good because you're just giving away control of the d-file. Now, the right move is going to be pretty easy to you because, again, the idea is in your head. Rook to d4, he stops halfway. Probably not a move that white was expecting. Now, white never really wants to capture because after pawn takes, Magnus undoubles his c-pawns and gets a very strong passed pawn. So the game continued with white playing f3 because, after all, this pawn might need attention one day. And look what Magnus does. I was expecting him to double rooks, but no, he actually brings the rook behind the king. And now Magnus has all kinds of fancy checkmates coming up. The king can't move anywhere, and Magnus is maybe thinking about playing knight f4. And I know if you've gotten this far in my videos, you've seen my 10 fancy checkmates. We have a hooked mate coming if knight f4. And if knight f4 and the bishop takes, pawn takes is a super amazing checkmate thanks to the strength of this rook. I'm going to let you go ahead and visualize that in your head. So unfortunately for white, rook to d2 was a necessity, but after rook a1, that rook is still causing havoc, and eventually white sort of panicked and captured. Magnus took back with the pawn and went on to win the game due to the strength of this passed pawn. When it comes to our final couple of examples, I'm going to show you that in a chess nutmeg, it means traveling along the line, but it doesn't always mean traveling toward the enemy piece. Here, this is a game between probably the two most exciting chess players of all time. Mikhail Tal is white, Bobby Fischer is black, and the two bishops are, of course, lined up with each other. Now, we can't do the nutmeg that we've seen before, because if Bobby Fischer travels his bishop toward the white bishop, well, we couldn't call him Bobby Fischer if he played that move. But look what he did instead. he actually decided to travel his bishop backward to b5. Now, by the way, if you're wondering why he did not capture in this position, it's because after queen takes, his pawn on a6 would be really weak, and if he tried to move it, then white would play rook a4. Remember, it's important to blockade a weak pawn. And then white would play rook to a1. That pawn is probably going to be a goner. So if we go back to our starting position, Bobby moved the bishop back to b5. And after Mikhail captured, pawn takes, and the pawn was actually much safer and was able to move forward. After a very fun and complicated struggle, the game went on to be a draw. Two former world champions doing the nutmeg. Now, if you just remembered Bobby Fischer's idea, it's going to help you in our final puzzle. This position was courtesy of Jennifer Shahade, a two-time women's champion, who showed this to a collection of the top American girls. And I'm going to tell you, this is probably the hardest chess position I've ever shown in a ChessKid video. So I'm just going to warn you, you might want to go ahead and put on your favorite cartoon on mute and give it the entire length of the cartoon as your thinking time. That's right, probably about 15 or 20 minutes are needed for this one. However, if you remember what Bobby Fischer just did, you might just be able to figure out the answer. White to move, pause your video, grab a snack. This one's going to take a while. Okay, if you're back, first of all, I hope it's not after 10 seconds, because if it is, you probably were not thinking about Black's counterplay. Let me show you how Funmaster Mike went wrong originally. My first thought was to give check with my bishop, and of course Black has to block, there's no other reasonable move. And I thought, okay, we'll play queen to b2 and double attack this bishop, because if he takes, we give checkmate. The problem is, Black can just play king to g7, and the attack is over. Black is holding this position. Okay, we need to go back to our starting position. What else could we try? Well, here was my second thought. We give a check, and when the bishop blocks, we play queen e5, and I was so excited about my idea, I thought for sure I was right. If he takes our queen, bishop takes bishop leads to checkmate. If his king moves to g7, we play queen to e7, which fantastically wins this bishop. But just as I was getting happy about myself, I found, queen c1. We actually mated ourselves. Okay, that is not going to work. So how can we use the nutmeg? Well, it turns out bishop to d4 check is the correct move. Bishop f6. Now, we need to have some fun along the diagonal while taking care of queen c1. So the only clearly winning move, absolutely amazing, is to play, drum roll please, bishop back to b2, a nutmeg. The bishop travels along the diagonal, but actually my arrow's going the wrong way. The white bishop traveled backward to the square b2. And even though Black has a completely free move, he can't do anything. For example, if Black just makes a do-nothing move like pawn a5, then the magical queen e7 wins the game. There's no back rank checkmate. This bishop is double attacked, and if you take, there's a mate on f8. If we go back, Black might decide to push a pawn to stop all of those double bishop checkmates, giving the king an escape square. But now white wins by queen c4, which distracts the Black queen. If queen takes, we play the in-between move bishop takes bishop, which wins a piece. And if the queen does nothing, we've got a checkmate coming up. And even if Black could guard that mate, we could just take the queen and then take the bishop on the next turn. There is simply no defense. Okay, I apologize if I tortured you with that final example. It took Funmaster Mike many minutes to be able to get that. If you solved it in any length of time, you are a true champion. All right, we've learned a new word today, the nutmeg. If you tell anybody outside of ChessKid land, they won't know what that means, but I hope the term takes root. It's all about moving pieces along a line, but not quite to the square your opponent is expecting.